On The Fix, we enjoy digging deep and looking at which is the necessity to take our country forward. What are the issues that need to take our country forward? Now, tourism is, of course, the sector that is on the path to a fast recovery as investors and financiers regain confidence in the South African economy. That's at least if Tourism Minister Derek Hanekom is to be believed. He was addressing a tourism investment seminar held last week, and of course that brought together a number of role players to provide the opportunity for domestic and international investors to interact with a wider range of product owners, development finance institutions, major international airlines, travel trade and policymakers. Well, the Minister now joins us in the studio. Minister Hanekom, thank you so much for joining us on The Fix. I believe this is your first time here. Welcome.
It sure is. Hi Karima, hi Peter.
Hello.
Good to be here.
Yeah.
Now, just recently, after you had that seminar, you had another address where you spoke about the fact that there are some real challenges. One of the big issues, of course, is state capture, that it has impacted on the way in which the country is perceived and its institutions. Tell us a little bit about what kind of impact state capture has had on tourism and what's your plan to get out of it?
I'm not too sure which addresses you're talking about, but one way or the other, let's talk about the issue rather. I mean, a number of factors could impact negatively on tourism growth and people's perceptions of South Africa, brand South Africa. So clearly, state capture, corruption, crime, these are all negatives. And, you know, clearly we need to deal with them. I would say, when it comes to state capture, that the positive story is that we are dealing very, very decisively with state capture. Not as quickly as people would like to see, but thoroughly. And I think that's very important.
Absolutely, Peter?
Yeah. Look, I mean, tourism, Minister, is obviously, I'm sure to you and to most sentient beings, is the slam dunk easy opportunity here. I mean, this is, it is, you know, I went to Thailand at the beginning of last year. And I got to the airport. I didn't have a visa. I got to the airport, and I got to the guy, you know, the official at immigration, and he looked at my passport, sort of tore off a piece of paper, wrote a date on it, and basically that was how long I could stay in the country. And I walked through. I mean, it took literally. I hardly stopped walking, and you know, in comparison, Thailand, which was 1963. A much more backward economy than we were in South Africa even then. Thailand last year took $57 billion in tourism receipts, and we took $9 billion. And we just put every barrier that we possibly can in front of a tourist to get into this country. Why can't we just open up? Why can't you not just walk in here and get a 30-day visa without questions asked? Who are we to ask why you're here or what you're doing here?
That's what most countries do, Peter. Yeah. Maybe Thailand doesn't do it, but most countries do it. Yeah. When you go to visit the UK or the USA or Germany, any of the Schengen countries, you need a visa.
Sure.
And a number of countries don't need a visa to come to South Africa. I think the challenge is to find the balance between reasonable security considerations, including reasonable steps to stand against possible child trafficking, human trafficking, reasonable steps.
Yeah.
So, you know, the beginning of
your intelligence services know what they're doing, and your police.
Well, and to have really seriously trained officials. Yeah. And I'll tell you in a moment what the UK, Canada do, because they also take it very seriously. Clearly, we need to. But your opening statement was, you know, we put so many barriers in the way, and I think you're correct. We've got such a wonderful offer. We're doing a good marketing job, etc. I think what you're seeing now, in the same way as we're seeing with state capture, is a process of making it easier.
Yeah.
So the process of relaxing visa requirements, doing away with some of the requirements for children travel, for example, those are significant steps to make it easier for people to come to South Africa.
I don't want to cause trouble in the cabinet or
anything
like that.
You're a troublemaker, Peter.
I mean, your colleague at Home Affairs, frankly, I thought that his reforms, his contribution to the stimulus package was really minimal and quite pathetic, really. And I'm surprised to hear you say that you thought they were progressive and making a real contribution. I mean, in money terms, I mean, how many more people get through the barriers now than would have before?
Okay, well, I think then it's necessary to unpack it and say, well, how will it make a difference and what is it actually? So I won't touch on the work permits and the easier, making it easier for people to obtain work permits. Business wanted that, and that's what's going to happen. But we all know that there was a lot of fuss and legitimate complaints about the difficulty for family travel, for people to come to South Africa with their children, especially single parents or an adult traveling with a niece or a nephew or some other child. Now that is quite a significant change. And so it impacted especially on countries, by the way, Peter, that don't need visas. So, you know, UK citizens don't have difficulty coming to South Africa. They do when they're traveling with children. So that's why I say the announcement was not insignificant. For family travel, and those countries, Germany, the UK, USA, are big source markets, and family travel is a very big thing. So what is the change? So currently, what was introduced in 2015 was the requirement that if you travel with a child, or a child is traveling alone, that you need a bundle of documents, and you would not even be able to get onto the plane if you don't have those documents with you. What's the change? The change is now bringing it in line with exactly what the UK does, Canada does, USA, Germany. In particular, we took Canada and USA as examples, and that was the cabinet decision of 2015. And that is, the starting point will be, you aren't going to be asked for these documents. You aren't required to carry these documents. You may be asked to prove your relationship with the child that you're traveling with in the event that there are grounds for suspicion. That's exactly what those countries do. So if you're traveling, for example, if you're a child traveling with both parents, both same names on the passport, there simply won't be any question asked because there won't be any need to.
Unless the official concerned has a bad day and thinks that you look suspicious. No,
I think those criteria will be clearly spelled out.
Okay.
To say, in the event, for example, this scenario, that would be one of the scenarios where you don't, unless there are really serious grounds. Training of immigration officials is critical. That is true. But in that instance, there'd have to be something that is really unusual. And then you would ask a few questions. The big difference is and this was the statement by Minister Gigaba, it's by exception rather than a standard. So even if then you're advised, if you're traveling with your niece, for example, your niece, by the way, may not look like you, in fact, might be somebody that you adopted from the Philippines. So who knows what the story is. But in the event that there's something that seems a bit unusual, the questions will follow. You will be advised to carry documents with you, giving consent from the parents or the other parent. But you're not going to be asked as a matter of routine. And in the event, and furthermore, one of the difficulties that people currently have is that they have to get affidavits, sworn affidavits at great expense, and translations. That won't be required anymore either. So it's quite a significant change. So you would be advised, in the event of suspicion, to carry the documents with you to prove that relationship between you and child. If you don't have them with you, you'll be afforded time to get them. You're not going to be put on the next plane back. Those are quite big changes with respect to child travel. There are some other changes as well.
Minister, I just want to shift the conversation away from these kind of barriers that people had to entry. Tourism is that one thing that knocks onto everyone's door. So, for example, the fact that we have Table Mountain as a place that is now considered as a place of serious crime affects you, but it's not in your control to deal with it. The fact that South Africa's route from here to Mumbai was cancelled, when that was always a route that was, fully booked, fully packed. That's also not within your purview. How do you get together with your other cabinet colleagues to look at a synergized approach so that your objectives doesn't bump up against theirs? Because that is often the issue. You might be offering fantastic packages, but we don't offer routes, or it takes 100 years to get to the country, for example, or you say Table Mountain is the most beautiful mountain in the world, but people get attacked and killed there.
No, well, it's true that these are serious matters, and they could impact very negatively on tourism. But let's just say, I'm glad you said it. We have an extraordinary offer. We have a beautiful country, so we go out there, we market it well, we make it as easy as possible for people to come here. This, by the way, Peter, is first round, so there are more things coming. And then, direct flights make a difference, especially one of our big potential growth markets is India. So the return of that direct route from Mumbai to Johannesburg would make a big difference, in fact, direct flight, Mumbai-Johannesburg.
So who would you have to speak to in Cabinet to get that route up? Because, for example, the allegation is that that route was cancelled because the Guptas had vested interest in an opposite airline and a competitor against SAA. How does cooperative governance work so that we are able to look at the total value chain and look at tourism's part in it in terms of economic development?
Well, a very good question, and I've also heard the story, and I don't know whether the story is true or not, but what I do know is that the flight was discontinued.
Yes.
And,
so
who do I talk to? I talk to my very good friend Praveen Gordon, because he's responsible for South African Airways, and I've already had the discussion. So, I mean, clearly, SAA is in trouble. So it does have to take into account profitability of routes, etc. But, when you have a national carrier, you can take into account other considerations. A route does not have to immediately be profitable for it to make sense to reintroduce. So a different kind of modeling is necessary. But at the same time, we don't want SAA to get more and more into debt. The issue actually is not whether the national carrier does it. The issue is that we have a direct route. And so that's the one. So I talk to my colleagues. As we've had very good discussions. Whatever the situation was a couple of years ago, good discussions with Minister Gigaba, and we're making good progress. This being a very important first round. Minister of Police, similarly. But we're not just waiting for the police. We have a program, Karima, that recognizing that is a problem, but I want you to immediately say, a crime I'm talking about, and the safety of tourists. One should immediately say that most places that tourists go to in South Africa are actually very, very safe. I dare say our beaches in Cape Town and Durban and Port Elizabeth, etc., are a lot safer than some beaches, I won't mention countries, some beaches in other countries in the world. So many, many important tourism precincts, popular places are quite safe. Having said that, we do want our hiking trails to be safe, so we introduced a program in this year's financial year for 1,400 safety monitors to be trained to do precisely that. And we'll be working with sandparks to go onto Table Mountain. We'll be working very closely with the other EPWP projects, like working on fire, to ensure that there are people patrolling all the time, including urban precincts. Some of it is already in place. The rest is still being negotiated and contracts being finalized.
Before we run out of time, can you just tell me a little bit about numbers and targets? How many, roughly a year, how many people come here as genuine tourists, not on a day's business trip or anything like that? How many people come here on holiday?
Yeah, so there
and where do you want to get that number to?
Oh, okay. Your 15 minutes is hopelessly inadequate. We need 2 hours.
We know
2 hours at least. But in any event, where we stand at the moment, in 2017, we crossed the 10 million mark. Right. But that does include the immediate neighboring countries, and the majority come from immediate neighboring countries. By definition, a person who comes, international definition, United Nations World Tourism Organization, somebody who comes and spends more than a day in your country is by definition a tourist. Okay. But I know where you're going, Peter. It's the high-value tourists who come here for a holiday or come here for a business event and stay on, that sort of thing. So from our overseas markets, we get about 3 million a year currently. Where do we want to take it to? Well, from the 10 million international arrivals, the South African tourism had what they called a 5-in-5 program. Domestic tourism is also very important, but clearly, the disposable incomes and the health of our economy impacts immediately on that. By the way, our exchange rate that nobody celebrates is very much in our favor. I liked what you said the other day, by the way, in your column. Tourism is an export. It's an easy export in which we have serious competitive advantage. But so the 5-in-5 means 4 million additional international tourist arrivals over a 5-year period and 1 million additional domestic tourists. So that's where we want to go. At the moment, it's a very employment-intensive sector. So growth in tourism translates into lots of jobs, lots of opportunities.
Now, one of the things that the President said when he was at the Organization of African Unity was, of course, this idea of relaxing barriers for Africans to travel on the continent. We see a lot of African countries where you also don't have the requirement for visas. I went to Addis Ababa, for example. I went and I got my visa, on the airport. And so how is the plans going for intra-Africa tourism and getting people from other parts of the continent to come to South Africa in a way that's less onerous?
Very good question. The free trade has to go along with, at the very least, freer movement of people.
Yes.
And so part of the announcement, by the way, was negotiations with a set of countries for visa waivers, and that includes most of the North African countries, Middle Eastern countries, but it's a first round. Ghana was included as well, and some other countries. There are questions about other countries that are excluded.
Yeah.
But so it has to be a move towards freer movement of people across the African continent, and I think we've taken a sort of an important step in that direction.
Yeah. Just to add
by the way, I mean, at the moment, so no country, very few countries allow everybody in from any country without a visa. So I think a very important step would be, on the assumption that some countries probably will need visas, is to at least make it easier for them to get the visa. So the move towards e-visas is very important.
Yeah. One final question I want to ask you, Minister, before our 15 minutes run out. We've got this investment summit coming up. We're going to be speaking with our panel. What is your sector projecting to contribute to that drive that the President has put and that target that has been laid out? I think, it's 150 billion rand that they're hoping to announce in pledges and so on. What will tourism bring into that 150 billion?
Okay, so we're not including the investments that are happening anyway or plan to happen anyway. Last year we had 7 billion rand invested in tourism, which was 8% of total investment in South Africa. Investments in tourism are a little bit different from investing in a mine.
Yeah.
So if there's investment in infrastructure, that really benefits tourism. But direct tourist-related investments, we're talking about expanding the hotel at Maropeng, we're talking about a Durban waterfront development. We've got on the table investment-ready projects amounting to about 10 billion rand that we have on the table. And that does not include the hotels that Marriott might be building or other hotel groups. So we, clearly, the good thing about investment in tourism, some of it would be hotels, but if they're facilities, it immediately makes or resorts, it makes your offer an improved offer.
Yeah.
And that in itself has positive spin-offs.
Yeah.
And others will invest with their own money in the hotel that they're going to expand or going to build, or opening up a guest house that isn't with state money.
Absolutely. Minister, unfortunately, our 15 minutes are up. We're probably going to have you back to look at whether you are making improvements and whether those initiatives you're talking about are going to be, taking root. Thank you so very much for coming onto The Fix. We do appreciate it.
I refuse to leave.
Well, still up ahead, we take a broader look at the progress made toward the investment summit with our expert panel of business leaders and economists. See you after the break.